What's up? I'm Early Earl. I thank y'all for sliding down into these YouTube streets and coming down here to the early way. We are back with another Rewind review where I slide up in these YouTube streets with a review over an episode or episodes of some of my favorite reality or scripted shows from back in the day. And today we are going to rewind it back to 2009 and review College Hill. And this season they're in South Beach, Miami. This is episode 10, Rib Gate, part 1. We have Tiffany, Paul, Milan, Catherine, Chris, Kyle, Allison, and Brandon all on the cast. And we start the show off with the aftermath of the tussle with Chris and Brandon. They were about to fight over the house rules, cleaning up after themselves being the topic of that fight. Everyone was mad at Brandon because he had threw up a couple days before and he didn't clean it up right after. Brandon had called Chris a bitch, and then that's how the whole fight started. We see Paul upset walking out the room that Chris, Kyle, Milan, and Tiffany were in, saying that he can go home. He's feeling away because Kyle and Milan had called him out. They felt like he should have stopped the fight since he's supposed to be cool with Chris instead of egging on the fight. He gets on the phone, that is the direct line to the producers, and he's telling them that they can send him home. He can go to his auntie in Carol City right now before he walked outside. Back in the room, we got Kyle with tears in his eyes telling Chris that he didn't like how Paul wasn't trying to break up the fight. Last time somebody got into a fight that they went home, and he didn't want that to happen this time. And he wanted Chris to talk to Paul just to see where his head was at. We shoot back over to Paul, who's sitting outside out back on the dock looking at the water. He says in his confessional that instead of dealing with Kyle and Milan, he'd rather just leave. And I thought that was weak of him. Why, when they call you out, you want to leave? Why can't you just sit there and talk and hear how they feel? You say how you feel and let that be that. You ain't got to leave the house just because somebody said something about you that you did wrong to them. Chris comes out there to check on Paul. He and Paul got similar backgrounds, and if no one understands Paul, Chris knows he does. They both have this street mentality where that if it's a problem with somebody, you handle that shit right then and there. Ain't no breaking it up. Chris tells Paul that what Kyle and Milan said to him, he took it as a form of miscommunication. They weren't coming at him wrong. Paul says to Chris that he got so much shit going on in his head right now, he really don't give a fuck what they saying, how they feel. But you rather just leave. Just keep that mentality. You don't give a fuck what they saying, how they feel. You ain't got to leave the house. Chris tell Paul just hear what they got to say. Paul said he'll sleep on it and think about it. And they end the night on a good note. The next morning, we see Brandon, and he's heading out to the gym. He says in his confessional that what happened between him and Chris happened, and it's over for him today. He ain't got no worries about it. Allison receives a call from her boyfriend, Pioneer, and he tells her that he's coming over tonight, and then everyone else heads out to school. Later on that day, after school, Paul comes home, and Kyle goes to his room so they can talk. Kyle just wanted to know why Paul encouraged the fight instead of trying to defuse the situation last night. Paul explains to Cal that where he's from, if you get called a bitch, you get your ass whooped, point blank and period. Brandon called Chris a bitch, so he was going to let Chris handle that himself. That's why he didn't break up the fight. He thought it was just two grown men and they was going to go at it. Cal said, sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt you. He says that he got love for Paul and understands that they have different backgrounds. He understands that. But from where he's from, he diffused the situation instead of letting it play out. But he's willing to learn and understand that from where Paul is from, they stand on business. They got to fight it out. Like they got a point to prove or something. Later on that night, Allison's boyfriend, Pioneer, comes over. And when she said her boyfriend name was Pioneer, I thought he was something totally different than what we got on the screen. Pioneer is a tall, long-haired, nerdy white boy. He gave me one of them guys that when I was in school, he played with his Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon cards all the time. That's what Pioneer gave me. Allison jumps in Pioneer's arms. She's happy to see him, and he is equally as happy to see her. She says that she knows he's strange, but she introduced him to her roommates anyway before going upstairs to her room. Paul, Chris, and Kyle, who's downstairs around the pool table, start joking about how Allison is going to get her some that night. Kyle gets his ass on the pool table and lays across her all dainty like and says, "Oh, Allison's going to get her some tonight." Oh, Allison is going to get her some tonight. Oh, Pioneer. And they was right. Allison got her some that night. That's why she always walk around all happy like everybody else be upset. She got a smile on her face. As you know, the time moved on, Cal, who says he's been under a lot of pressure and stress, decides to relieve himself by going on a stealth retreat of food. So he decided to grill himself up a slab of ribs. He says that the ribs were juicy and tender, and they had this commercial look for him. They had a commercial look to them. Y'all, he then sashays over to the staircase. He tiptoed up to the fourth step, sat down, threw his head back, and began eating his ribs. After he ate a few of his ribs, he put them in the microwave to save for the next day. He then goes upstairs to go to bed. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, Allison walks Pioneer out. And then she goes to the kitchen where Brandon and Catherine and Chris were. She sees that there were ribs in the microwave and she asks whose own were they. She learned that the ribs was Kyle's, and she referenced one of the house rules where that if any food was left out, it should be thrown away. But she knows that since Kyle is sleeping, that's not happening. She then looked over at Catherine, who had this evil grin on her face. Catherine gets to thinking about how Kyle came at her on her first night in the house. He talked about how she rehearsed her greeting. He talked bad about her clothes, said she had on some fake skin-like clothes that he thought came from Walmart. He just talked bad about the girl, and he didn't even know her. No one knew her. She was just new to the house. I guess he needed somebody to pick on. Catherine then decides to get revenge by eating the ribs. She sat at the table along with Allison and Brandon, and she ate the ribs. I mean, she killed the ribs. Allison jumps in her confession and says that she's scared of Kyle's wrath. And I'm like, you should be, because you is a part of it. Instead of just laughing, you should have told her not to eat that man ribs. Well, now you are a guilty part. You is guilty by association. After Catherine killed the ribs, they started discussing on what they should do with the bones and what they should say to Cal once he realizes the ribs are missing. And I'm like, you was big and bad enough to eat them straight like that. Just tell him you ate them. You was bold enough to get in the microwave and eat that man ribs, so be bold enough to tell him you ate them. Brandon says that he know Cal won't come at him hard, so he'll say he ate them. He like, Cal won't give him all what he'll give y'all, so just put the blame on him. Catherine says she cool with that, and she don't really want the drama with Cal, so she thought that was a good idea. And I'm like, you don't want the drama with this man, but you said and ate his ribs. Make that make sense. Just say you don't want to deal with the aftermath of over the ribs. Don't say you don't want the drama, because you want the drama. It's very obvious that you wanted the drama. She then throws the ribs in a brown paper bag, and then she shoved them down in the garbage. The next morning, Cal woke up, and the first thing on his mind was his ribs. He goes to the microwave and look for his ribs. He had y'all, he looked in the microwave, saw nothing, and closed the microwave right back. He had to double look. He could believe that it wasn't nothing in the microwave. So he opened up the microwave again and looked in there and saw nothing. Brandon and Chris, they down in the kitchen with him, and they looking at him while he looking for his ribs. And Kyle asks out loud, where can his ribs be? Brandon, who agreed last night to say that he ate them, told Cal that he can count him out. He don't know what happened to his ribs. Oh, then he reminds Cal of the house rules where that if food is left out, it gets thrown away. We got Paul and Catherine downstairs too, but they're off in the sitting area. But they can see the kitchen and hear everything that's going on in the kitchen. They can hear Kyle asking about his ribs and could hear Brandon say nothing. Catherine jumps in her confessional and says she knew Brandon was a bitch ass nigga just by that. And I'm like, I agree, because Brandon, why didn't you tell Kyle, like you told Allison and Catherine, that you gonna tell him you ate his ribs? You didn't say nothing. You quickly told him to count you out. You quickly told him it wasn't you, basically. So let me find out you was scared of Kyle's wrath too. Kyle goes to the garbage and he looks in it. He picks up the brown paper bag, opened it up, and saw his ribs. And he got pissed. He got mad. He got mad. Immediately, he speculates that it was Brandon, Allison, or Catherine that ate his ribs. He said that he's going to find out which one of them ate them, and he wants whoever ate them come up off $10. Shit, 11 because inflation is high. And I'm like, God damn. Back then, ribs was like $10 or $11. Right now, that shit is between $15 and $30 for a slab. Y'all, let's go back to 2009 and eat good and stop playing with the food. Catherine goes upstairs to finish getting ready for school, and Paul follows behind her. He saw the funny faces she was making when Cal first started asking about the ribs. And he asked her, did she eat them? She said, no, she didn't eat them. She murdered those ribs. She killed them fucking ribs. Ate them things right up. Paul tells her just confess and give Cal $10 on her way out to school. She said, fuck all that, got dressed and headed out to school. When she left, Paul goes downstairs and tells Cal that Catherine was the one who ate his ribs. And he said that is stealing. And he said he gonna wait for her ass till she get home. And that was part 1 of South Beach, College Hill, Ribgate. Stay tuned for part 2. I do thank y'all for coming down here to the early way. And until next time.